Hey friends, it's Tyler here from Rehab to Fab Designs. We are working on an antique dresser today. I am using Dixie Belle's color collard greens, which is really a dark green. And then I also have this color here, which is a little more neutral. It's called dried sage. It's kind of a taupey, light brown tan kind of color. And I'm blending the two together. So you could do this either way when you're blending paint. You can either add your dark color around the outside first and then go back and do the light, or you can do light all over and then come back and do the dark around the edges. Truthfully, it doesn't matter. It works either way. The biggest thing you want to remember when you're blending paint is to keep the paint moving, so you have to keep it wet. And there's different things you can do. So when paint is wet, you're going to, when you blend them, you're going to mix those two colors together, and so you're going to kind of create a third color basically with it. Or you can try to just blend it around the edges where the two colors meet, and then cause, keep your two colors and cause just make like a kind of transition color right there where they overlap. For this, I blended the two colors together on the other side to kind of make a third color, just to get me a lighter kind of green. And then I came back around it and reframed it again, just to darken it around the edges. And then obviously, your goal is to let the colors end up being the same, because you don't want them the two sides to look different. I should say sides, not colors. I have a coat of primer on this because this is an old piece, and old pieces are known for bleeding, especially after you sand them to prep them. It will kind of open up the piece for those tannins to come out and bleed, and so you'll definitely want to prime. So this has 2 coats of Boss Primer, which is a primer by Dixie Belle. It's also a stain blocker and an odor blocker. So it's good for these really old pieces that are known for being smelly and known for bleeding. So once you get your colors on, I'm going to use my mister bottle here to kind of spray. And then I'm just going to use a third brush, which is a dry brush, that I'm using to kind of blend the colors together. And I had to let it sit for a minute, so it may be a little dry and crunchy. So then once I do that, I'm just going to start blending these together all the way across, top to bottom. And then you can kind of see here now, the colors are starting to mix here and create a new color. I have got little pieces of thick primer that I don't like because it's going to show up, so sorry about that. It also picks up lint sometimes when I like my brush. And I don't like that on there either. So once you start blending these together, you can kind of see it changed the overall color here. So where I have the dried sage, it was kind of a taupe color, and it still is different obviously from the green, but it's blending the green in with it and creating like a third color. Another important thing to remember when you're blending paint is to use multiple directions with your paintbrush. So you don't want to just do this and that's it. You want to come back and go the opposite direction for kind of a cross hatch, because it just helps to blend those colors more. And your first coat is always going to be ugly. Just go on and tell yourself that when you first get started. That way you're not disappointed. It's not going to be as smooth as you want. It's not going to be as soft as you want as far as the blend goes. And that's okay, because really with your first coat, we're just getting some paint on, getting started, and kind of getting the idea where you want your colors to change from one to the other. So that's pretty soft right there. I am going to come back now with my collard greens again, and I'm going to apply it around the edges, just like I did a minute ago. Same as before, and that's just going to give us a little bit more depth and dimension, if you will, by adding the darker color here around it. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to kind of work from the top down. Sorry about that. That's my T-Rex 7-month-old in the background. We're just going to keep working this until it gets nice and soft. And I'm going to put it on silent mode here. Just continue using your third brush, which is your blending brush, to go around the perimeter of this panel and bring that paint that we just added into the middle. You can see here where I went in horizontal brush strokes, how it made those little lines that showed up after I did that. But once I start going over it vertically again, it kind of erases those. So it basically just softens the blend and the transition from like one color to the other to kind of make them blend more seamlessly together. And you can achieve this by just continuing to brush. One, just keep brushing it until it's nice and soft and smooth. And two, make sure you're using those varying directions with your brush strokes. Also, towards the end, you want to get softer and softer with your hand so that you're just barely touching the piece, making lighter and lighter strokes to lighten it up again. Also, keep in mind that this is your first coat, and so it does not have to be perfect. So generally speaking, your first coat does not look as good as your second coat blended. So you have a couple of options. Sometimes people will put on a solid color for the first coat, and then other times you can go ahead and do your blend on your first coat. The reason being, you're going to paint back over it with the second coat, and sometimes maybe even 3 depending on the piece, or if you want to change the look up a little bit. And so you don't always have to do your blended look on the first coat because you're going to paint over it. However, I usually do. That way I can kind of get an idea of how it's going to look, kind of get an idea of where my colors are going to change, where it's going to be darker, where it's going to be lighter, and just kind of give me an overall idea of what it's going to look like. That way, if you don't like the way it looks, then you can always change it on your second coat to kind of adjust it a little bit. If you feel like you need a little more dark in areas, just simply add a little bit more with your darker paint and brush. And just keep brushing. Just as long as you keep the paint wet, you can continue to work that blend. Once it starts drying, however, it will start pulling. But as long as you keep it wet, you can keep working it. So just if you feel like it's starting to dry a little bit and you can feel a little tug on your brush, just spray it with your misting water and just keep painting it. And the more you do it, the softer it gets. And just got to keep going, guys. If you like to see full start to finish tutorials on pieces like this, we have several for sale on our website, or you can join our monthly membership group on Facebook where we teach all of our finishes along with a good friend Susie from the White Plum. We have numerous tutorials available in the group that you get access to on day one. If interested, please see the links under the description of this video or feel free to message me. As always, thanks for watching, and be sure and check us out on all platforms of social media under Rehab to Fab Design.